The night is heavy over the Scottish Highlands in 1305, a land scarred by war and subjugation. A lone campfire flickers, casting jagged shadows across the rugged face of William Wallace, a man in his 40s, his eyes burning with defiance, yet etched with the exhaustion of a decade-long rebellion. His sword, notched from countless battles, rests across his knees as he scans the darkness, alert to every rustle of leaves. The wind carries a wolf's howl, a reminder of the wild, untamed spirit of Scotland, a spirit Wallace has fought to preserve. Once, he was a beacon of hope, a minor landowner turned warrior who rallied his countrymen at Stirling Bridge in 1297, proving English might could be broken. But now, King Edward I, known as Longshanks, has tightened his grip on Scotland, and Wallace is a hunted man, his name synonymous with rebellion and doom. The narrator's voice, grave and resonant, speaks over the scene. The year is 1305. Scotland bleeds under Edward's iron rule. William Wallace, the knight who dared dream of freedom, is a shadow in his own land, betrayed by time and treachery. The scene shifts to the outskirts of Glasgow, where Wallace moves through a sleeping village, his cloak drawn tight against the chill. Torchlight glints off the armor of English soldiers patrolling the streets, their boots heavy on the dirt. A crude wanted poster flaps on a post, its sketch of Wallace's face marred by rain, promising 500 marks for his capture. The narrator's voice returns. Edward's spies weave a net of betrayal. Fear and greed turn friend to foe, and loyalty frays like threadbare cloth. In the shadows of a doorway, Sir John Menteith, a Scottish knight in his 30s with cold, calculating eyes, watches Wallace pass. Once a compatriot, Menteith has bent the knee to Edward, trading honor for survival. He nods to a cloaked informant who melts into the night to carry word to the English. Menteith's whisper is barely audible, laced with ambition. The king will have his prize by dawn. His betrayal is a wound deeper than any sword could cut, for it comes from within Scotland's own ranks. Dawn is still a faint promise when Wallace, weary and unaware, rests against a gnarled tree in a clearing near Glasgow. His breath is visible in the pre-dawn chill, his hand never far from his sword. Suddenly, the silence shatters. Armed men burst from the shadows, a mix of Scottish turncoats and English soldiers, their blades drawn. Menteith steps forward, his face a mask of false regret. "It's over, Wallace," he says, his voice steady but hollow. "You've fought long, but no man outruns a king's will." Wallace's eyes blaze, his body tensing as he grips his sword, but the numbers are overwhelming. He fights fiercely, felling 2 men with swift, brutal strikes, but a blow to the head sends him to his knees. Ropes bind his wrists, and his sword clatters to the ground. The narrator speaks again. Betrayal is the final blade. Captured near Glasgow, the symbol of Scottish resistance is now a prisoner, his fate sealed by a traitor's hand. Bound and bloodied, Wallace is dragged through the streets of a nearby town, the first step in a journey designed to break him. English soldiers prod him forward, their faces hard with contempt. A small crowd gathers, some spitting, others staring in silence. A woman, her face twisted with hatred, shouts, "Traitor! You'll pay for your rebellion." A boy, no older than 10, watches wide-eyed, clutching a stick as if it were a sword, torn between fear and awe. Wallace's gaze remains fixed ahead, unyielding, as if he sees beyond the jeering faces to a Scotland unbroken. The narrator's voice grows somber. This is no mere arrest. It is the beginning of a spectacle, a parade of humiliation crafted by a king who understands the power of fear. The soldiers tie Wallace to a wooden hurdle, a crude frame meant to drag him over the long road to London. The cobblestones await, ready to tear at his flesh, each mile a calculated torment. The journey south begins, a grueling procession through English towns where crowds grow larger, their jeers louder. Wallace, bound to the hurdle, endures the jolting pain as horses pull him over uneven ground. Blood streaks the path behind him, a crimson trail marking his degradation. In one town, a man hurls a rotten apple, striking Wallace's shoulder. "Die, rebel!" he bellows, emboldened by the crowd's fervor. Yet Wallace's silence is his defiance, his eyes fixed on some distant point, as if drawing strength from the land he fought for. The narrator intones, "This is psychological warfare, a king's attempt to transform a hero into a curiosity, a leader into a broken man." But Wallace's spirit is not so easily crushed. The soldiers, under orders to prolong his suffering, ensure he remains conscious, their taunts a constant drone. A young English soldier, barely a man, hesitates, his eyes flickering with unease as he meets Wallace's gaze. "Move, dog," the soldier mutters, but his voice lacks conviction. By the time the procession nears London, Wallace is a battered figure, his body bruised and torn, yet his resolve unbroken. The city looms ahead, its walls dark against the August sky. The narrator's voice carries a weight of inevitability. London awaits, a stage for Edward's theatre of cruelty. Here, Wallace will face not just death, but a punishment designed to erase his name from hope. The gates of the Tower of London open, swallowing Wallace into its shadowed depths. Inside, guards shove him into a cell, the iron bars clanging shut. A priest, sent to offer confession, approaches, but Wallace turns away. "I've no sins to confess to Edward's God," he says, his voice hoarse but firm. The priest retreats, shaken by the fire in Wallace's eyes. The narrator closes the scene. In this cell, Wallace is alone, but his defiance burns brighter than ever. Tomorrow, the king's justice will begin, a justice that seeks not just to kill, but to destroy a symbol. The morning of August 23rd, 1305, dawns over London, a city pulsing with anticipation. The air is warm, thick with the scents of baked bread and horse dung, but an undercurrent of bloodlust hums through the crowded streets. Inside the cavernous Westminster Hall, its stone walls echoing with the weight of authority, William Wallace stands bound before a panel of English judges. His body is bruised from the harrowing journey south, his clothes tattered, yet his eyes blaze with unyielding defiance. The hall is packed with nobles, clergy, and spectators, their murmurs a low roar. The narrator's voice, heavy with disdain, sets the scene. This is no trial, but a stage. King Edward's justice is a performance designed to cloak cruelty in the guise of law. The Lord Chief Justice, a stern figure in flowing robes, rises, his voice booming with theatrical gravity as he reads the charges. "William Wallace, you stand accused of treason, murder, sacrilege, arson, and crimes against the crown of England. How do you plead?" The words hang in the air, sharp as a blade. Wallace, his wrists chafed raw by ropes, straightens despite the pain. His voice, though hoarse from days of torment, carries a quiet strength that silences the hall. "Treason? I am no subject of Edward's, nor ever will be. My loyalty is to Scotland, and I'll not betray her for your lies." A ripple of shock passes through the crowd. Some gasp, others jeer, but a few, hidden in the shadows, exchange glances of reluctant admiration. The Lord Chief Justice's face hardens, his eyes glinting with the certainty of a predetermined verdict. "Your defiance condemns you," he declares, his words dripping with contempt. "You have betrayed the king's peace, slaughtered his soldiers, and defiled his churches. For this, you will suffer the full penalty of treason." The narrator interjects. The charges are a tapestry of propaganda, woven to paint Wallace not as a warrior, but a criminal. Treason, the gravest offense, demands the ultimate punishment, hanging, drawing, and quartering. The judges, all Edward's appointees, nod in unison, their faces masks of false solemnity. The trial unfolds as a grim charade. Witnesses, coerced or bribed, step forward with tales of Wallace's supposed atrocities, burned villages, murdered priests, and rebellion against a rightful king. A nervous clerk, clutching a parchment, stammers as he reads a fabricated account of Wallace's attack on an English garrison. Wallace listens, his expression unreadable, but when offered a chance to respond, he speaks with piercing clarity. "I fought for my people, not against your king's imagined rights. If killing invaders is a crime, then let every Scot be guilty." The crowd erupts, some shouting, "Traitor!" while others fall silent, struck by his resolve. The Lord Chief Justice slams his gavel, restoring order, and pronounces the sentence with chilling formality. "You will be drawn through London streets, hanged by the neck, disemboweled while yet alive, beheaded and quartered. Let this be a warning to all who defy the crown." The narrator's voice grows darker. The sentence is not merely death, it is annihilation, each step a symbol of degradation, designed to erase Wallace's humanity. As Wallace is led from the hall, the crowd's jeers follow him like a storm. Outside, London is transforming into a carnival of cruelty. Scaffolds rise at Smithfield, the city's execution ground, where vendors already hawk pies and ale to spectators, claiming the best spots. The narrator observes, "This is no mere punishment, it is spectacle, a public holiday to celebrate English power." In the Tower of London, Wallace is confined to a dank cell, the clank of chains his only companion. A priest, sent to extract a confession, approaches with a cross, his voice soft but insistent. "Repent, Wallace, and ease your soul's burden." Wallace's eyes, shadowed but unbroken, meet the priest's. "My soul is Scotland's, and it needs no absolution from Edward's God," he says, turning away. The priest retreats, unnerved, as the narrator notes. Even in chains, Wallace's defiance burns, a fire no cell can contain. The city prepares for the morrow's spectacle. English officials oversee the erection of a massive scaffold, its wood stained with the blood of past executions. A grizzled executioner, his face hidden by a hood, sharpens a knife with practiced precision, his movements mechanical, yet deliberate. "The rebel will scream before I'm done," he mutters to a guard, who nods with a smirk. Along the planned procession route, from the Tower to Smithfield, soldiers clear the streets, ensuring maximum visibility for the crowds. A young boy, clutching his mother's hand, watches the preparations, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. "Will he beg, Mama?" he asks. The mother, her face hardened by years of English rule, replies, "Not him. He's no ordinary man." The narrator's voice closes the scene. London hums with anticipation, its people conditioned to revel in suffering. Tomorrow, Wallace will face the king's wrath, but it is the crown that fears his legacy. The sun rises over London on August 23rd, 1305, bathing the city in a warm, mocking glow. The streets teem with life, vendors shouting, horses clattering, and a restless crowd swelling with anticipation. The air crackles with the promise of violence, a public holiday built on the spectacle of suffering. At the Tower of London, William Wallace, bloodied and bound, is dragged from his cell by English guards, their faces set in cold efficiency. His body bears the scars of his journey south, yet his eyes burn with an unbroken fire, a defiance that unnerves his captors. The narrator's voice, heavy with foreboding, speaks over the scene. Today, London becomes a theater of cruelty, its cobblestones a stage for Edward's vengeance. William Wallace, Scotland's champion, is no longer a man, but a symbol to be shattered. A guard shoves Wallace toward a wooden hurdle, a crude frame designed to drag him through the city. "Move, traitor!" the guard snarls, but Wallace's silence is a rebuke, his gaze fixed on some distant horizon. The procession begins, a calculated parade of humiliation. Wallace, tied to the hurdle, is pulled by horses through London's busiest streets, the cobblestones tearing at his flesh. Blood streaks the ground, a crimson trail marking his path. The crowd, a roiling mass of curiosity and malice, lines the route, their jeers rising like a storm. A woman hurls a rotten cabbage, striking Wallace's chest, and screams, "Die, rebel dog." A man, emboldened by the mob, spits and shouts, "Back to Scotland in chains." Yet among the faces, a young boy, clutching his mother's hand, watches with wide eyes, his expression torn between fear and awe. The narrator intones, "This is no mere punishment. It is psychological warfare designed to strip Wallace of dignity and Scotland of hope." The soldiers, under orders to prolong the spectacle, drive the horses slowly, ensuring every jolt maximizes Wallace's pain. His body shudders, but his face remains stoic, his eyes locked on an unseen point, as if drawing strength from the land he fought for. The procession winds through the city, passing markets and churches, each turn drawing larger crowds. The air grows thick with the stench of refuse and anticipation. A vendor, hawking pies, calls out, "See the traitor's end! Fill your bellies for the show!" The crowd laughs, some buying, others shoving for a better view. A young soldier, barely 20, hesitates as he prods Wallace with his spear, his eyes flickering with unease. "Keep moving," he mutters, but his voice lacks conviction, shaken by Wallace's unyielding silence. The narrator's voice grows darker. The crowd is not just witnessing, they are complicit, conditioned by Edward's propaganda to revel in cruelty. At a narrow street, a group of English patriots chant, "Long live the King," while throwing stones. One grazes Wallace's temple, drawing fresh blood, but he does not flinch, his silence louder than their cries. At last, the procession reaches Smithfield, London's execution ground, where a towering scaffold awaits, its wood stained with the blood of countless victims. The crowd here is denser, more frenzied, a carnival of death. Vendors sell ale and bread, their voices mingling with the roar of spectators who have claimed spots hours earlier. The executioner, a hulking figure in a black hood, stands ready, his knife gleaming with practiced menace. Wallace is untied from the hurdle and dragged to the scaffold, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. The crowd erupts in cheers as he's hoisted up, the ropes biting into his wrists. The narrator observes, "Smithfield is more than an execution ground. It is a stage where Edward's power is performed and Wallace's suffering is the main act." The executioner steps forward, his voice booming over the crowd. "Behold the fate of those who defy the king." He ties a rope around Wallace's neck, positioning it to strangle, not snap, ensuring a slow, agonizing death. The rope tightens, and Wallace's body convulses, his face turning purple as he struggles for breath. The crowd roars, some laughing, others falling silent, unnerved by the raw horror. Just as his eyes begin to dim, the executioner cuts the rope, and Wallace collapses, gasping, still alive. The narrator's voice is grim. Death is not the goal. Suffering is. Each moment is crafted to prolong Wallace's agony, to make him a warning etched in blood. The executioner raises his knife, its blade catching the sunlight, and steps toward Wallace, who lies panting on the scaffold. The crowd leans forward, hungry for the next act of cruelty, as Wallace's eyes, still open, burn with defiance. The scaffold at Smithfield stands as a grim altar to King Edward's wrath, the air thick with the stench of blood and burning flesh. William Wallace, barely conscious, lies sprawled on the blood-slicked wood, his chest heaving from the near-fatal strangulation. The crowd, a roiling sea of faces, presses closer, their cheers a cacophony of bloodlust and fascination. The executioner, his hooded figure looming like death itself, holds a gleaming knife, its edge honed for cruelty. The narrator's voice, heavy with sorrow, cuts through the din. This is the pinnacle of Edward's theatre, where pain is a message and Wallace's body a canvas for English power. The executioner kneels beside Wallace, his blade slicing into the rebel's abdomen with surgical precision. A scream tears from Wallace's throat, raw and inhuman, echoing across Smithfield. The crowd gasps, some turning away, others leaning in, enthralled by the horror. The executioner pulls out Wallace's entrails, holding them aloft for the crowd to see before tossing them into a fire pit. The flames crackle, the smell of burning flesh choking the air, a deliberate symbol of Wallace's spiritual destruction. Wallace's eyes, still open, flicker with pain, but never surrender. His voice, weak yet resolute, breaks through the agony. "Scotland will be free." The words, barely audible, pierce the crowd's frenzy, silencing a few who stand nearest the scaffold. A young boy, clutching his mother's hand, stares up, his face pale, the words etching themselves into his memory. The narrator intones, "Even in torment, Wallace defies." His words are a spark, kindling a fire Edward cannot extinguish. The executioner, unmoved, continues his work, prolonging the suffering with practiced skill. He lifts another organ, displaying it to the jeering crowd before it joins the flames. The spectacle is grotesque, yet meticulously choreographed, each act designed to strip Wallace of humanity. The crowd's enthusiasm wanes briefly, some faces betraying unease at the sheer brutality, but the executioner's efficiency pulls them back. The carnival atmosphere rekindling with shouts of "Traitor" and "For the King." Finally, the executioner steps back, his knife replaced by a heavy axe. Wallace, his body broken but his spirit unbowed, locks eyes with the hooded figure. The crowd falls silent, the weight of the moment palpable. With a single, swift stroke, the axe severs Wallace's head, blood spraying across the scaffold. The executioner lifts the head, still dripping, and the crowd erupts in a final, frenzied cheer. The narrator's voice is somber. Death, at last, is a release, but the humiliation is not yet complete. Edward's justice demands more than a life. It demands a warning. The executioner hacks Wallace's body into 4 quarters, each piece held up like a butcher's prize, the crowd roaring with approval. The head is set aside, soon to be dipped in tar for display on London Bridge. The quarters, blood-soaked and grotesque, are prepared for transport to Newcastle, Berwick, Stirling and Perth, each a grim trophy to deter rebellion. Night falls over London, the city's revelry fading into an uneasy quiet. On London Bridge, Wallace's head, now preserved in tar, stares blankly from a spike, a silent sentinel over the Thames. The narrator speaks. Edward sought to crush a rebellion, but he has forged a martyr. The horror of Wallace's death will echo beyond these stones. In a Scottish village, a small crowd gathers in secret, their faces lit by a single torch. A rebel, his voice trembling with resolve, whispers to the others, "They tore him apart, but they cannot tear Scotland's heart. Wallace's blood calls us to fight." The narrator continues, "The brutality meant to break Scotland instead strengthens it. Robert the Bruce, stirred by this sacrifice, will soon rise, carrying Wallace's dream to Bannockburn." The camera lingers on the torchlight, its flicker a promise of resistance. The aftermath ripples beyond Scotland. In a European court, a French envoy recounts the execution to a grim-faced noble, his words laced with horror. The English king's cruelty knows no bounds. This Wallace's death will haunt their name. The narrator observes, Edward's message of power reaches far, but so does his reputation for savagery, isolating England in a watching world. Back in London, the boy from the crowd, now alone, clutches a stick as if it were a sword, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The narrator's voice closes. Wallace's execution was meant to end a rebellion, but it birthed a legend. His suffering, etched in Scotland's soul, proves that some causes are worth any price. The screen fades to black, the distant sound of Scottish pipes rising, a haunting echo of freedom's cost.